Take two. Hey folks, my name is Rachel Mason. I'm a second year medical student, and thank you so much for being here today at our Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Symposium. Today we have two wonderful speakers. We have Dr. Ali Dinar and we have Dr. Rankin, who's joining us virtually.
Thank you so much. Is it okay for me to start now?
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this space. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for the invitation to speak here. And Dr. Ali Dinar, I think I pronounced that correctly. Thank you so much for all the information that you shared. I think you are teeing me up very nicely, although my talk is going to be a little bit different. Mine is entitled Challenge Accepted, Enrichment of the Physician Workforce. And before I move from this slide is intentional in the fact that, first of all, that is me at my doctoral convocation being hooded by my mentor, who is the late Dr. Ronald Glazer. And he was very, very instrumental in my life. And so while I am this person in front of you, I do want to, give some more background about myself and who I am before we get started so that you can better understand why I am so passionate and committed to these efforts in my role as admissions dean, in my role as anesthesiologist, and in my role as vice chair for diversity, equity, and inclusion in my department. So don't laugh, but yes, this is me, okay? I am the oldest of my siblings, and this is my core family, and that is me in the red dress with my mom and my dad and my sister. Unfortunately, I'm sorry? Oh, unfortunately, my dad was not in the home as I was growing up, so I did have to function as the oldest child, and I adopted survival skills that allowed me to be adaptable, flexible, and a protector. And I think those attributes have really served me well in all of my roles. And so my sister and I we thought normal kids. We were oblivious to the fact that we were growing up poor. Nonetheless, our steps were ordered. I graduated from high school and I was awarded a full academic scholarship. I graduated 6th in my class, which my husband and we have had strongly worded conversations over whose GPA was better, even though it was the exact same. And we went to 2 different schools. Nonetheless, I attended Ohio State as an undergraduate and majored in microbiology. And again, that's me being hooded, then went to medical school. And I share all of that to say that I come from very humble beginnings. And I didn't necessarily understand the rules of engagement. And I think there were opportunities that were laid before me that allowed me to take advantage of those opportunities. I had mentors and I had advisors and I had sponsors and I had people that believed in me, and I had an innate skill set that allowed me to navigate this terrain. And so I want to share that with you because I think it is because of who I am and my background and the opportunities that I have that motivate me to want to give back and serve in this role. So here is what is on the docket. And I was asked to speak about reducing health disparities. And for me, this requires a layered approach, and it can be seated in both my clinical hats and administrative hats. But today I'm only going to focus on the administrative hat of admissions because I'm serving as a gatekeeper, which is an awesome responsibility. You know, as an anesthesiologist, the best anesthetic is one where they don't remember me, which is perfect. That's the way it should be. But when it comes to admissions and teaching and medical students and residents, that's where I have the opportunity to be memorable. And so I want to be able to focus on how to explain how academic institutions can be responsive to matters of diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, even in the midst of efforts that seem to want to undermine policies and approaches that are intended to create equity. So we'll start by taking a very brief look at the history of medical school admissions and some barriers. We're going to talk about some promising practices from 2 different arms, both the student perspective and institutional perspective. And then, of course, we'll have time for questions and answers. And I will try to be respectful of time, but I want to try and make sure we get this all in. So I want to start with the historical context of the Flexner Report. And so this is something that you may or may not be aware of. The Flexner Report it has its educational impact. So Abraham Flexner is the gentleman that this article is, or this document is named after. And this individual, who was a critic, visited every medical school in the United States and Canada to assess their standards of education. And this happened in the early 1900s. And so his report was published, and the aftermath of the publication of this report resulted in more than half of the United States medical schools, some of them merged or closed by 1935. And so I want to also highlight the fact that this was actually published originally in early 1900s, 1910, but it was also subsequently republished 2 additional times. And so this should speak to the impact that it's had on medical education in the United States. And so as a result, medical school curriculums became more standardized, they lengthened academically, they were entrenched in sciences, they had research as components of their academic experience. And during this time, standards for hospital care were developed, improving patient care and trying to improve outcomes. Teaching hospitals emerged. And so all of this sounds very, very good. And in fact, teaching hospitals emerged, and by 1942 provided clinical sites for training in 15 medical and surgical specialties. And so all of this was intended as a health system quality improvement tool, and it offered recommendations. Again, financial reforms, how long a medical education should be. In fact, the recommendation was at least 4 years, which we still see today. Now, this all sounds very good, but this report drastically changed medical education, especially for African Americans and women. And it was interesting because the report had some interesting takes on it. And actually, there is, I would encourage you, if you have an opportunity and need some additional reading over Christmas break, in addition to those journals, take a look at this report. It had some recommendations that I believe are outdated, and I would suspect many others would argue that it was outdated. It believed that, it was interesting. It talked about the number of women that were actually enrolled versus the number of women that actually graduated. There was a stark difference, and it was almost 90% didn't finish. And the argument was made, well, women have plenty of opportunities, see how many are enrolled, but they didn't say anything about how many didn't actually complete the program or the factors that contributed to it. In addition, this report argued that Black physicians should be trained to serve only Black communities and only to the benefit of their white counterparts. And so it was this type of ideology that resulted in medical schools closing. So prior to this report, there were 7 medical schools in the United States, and I'll name them: Howard, Flint Medical College in New Orleans, Leonard Medical School in Raleigh, North Carolina, Knoxville Medical College in Knoxville, Memphis Medical Department in the University of Tennessee, Nashville, and then a National Medical College in Louisville. Within a decade of this report, only 2 remained: Howard University and Meharry. They were then, fortunately, later joined in the late 20th century by Morehouse School of Medicine and Charles R. Drew University of Medicine. And so this report had far-reaching impacts. While its intent was one thing, the impact landed very, very differently. And I believe there is still evidence of the impact of this Flexner report, both in the absence of both women and individuals who identify as underrepresented in medicine, especially in certain specialties. So we need to fix this. So again, this is just for historical context. Now, I also, unfortunately, this hasn't changed. And this change has been slow in terms of making progress in this. There was a recent publication in the Journal of Internal Medicine that found the percentage of physicians in the United States who are Black has only increased about 4% in the past 120 years. And I actually shared this letter, rejection letter, from Emory University dated August 5th, 1959. And it is addressed to a Mr. Marion Hood, and I'll read it. It says, "Dear Mr. Hood, acknowledgement is made of your letter of July 30th, enclosing your application for admission to our School of Medicine. I am sorry I must write you that we are not authorized to consider for admission a member of the Negro race. I regret that we cannot help you, and the director of admissions was kind enough to return the $5 application fee that it costs for medical school, much higher now. I am happy to report that Mr. Hood did go on to become Dr. Hood. He went to Clark Atlanta University, majored in biology, had a minor in chemistry, and Dr. Hood states that this rejection letter was actually expected. He earned his medical degree from Loyola University School of Medicine in Chicago in 1966 and went on to have a thriving career in obstetrics and gynecology. And so in 2018, he actually came out of retirement to work in an underserved clinic and area. And so this not so distant history serves us as a somber reminder that we have important work to do to tackle systemic barriers that are rooted in bias and inequality. And the narrative of racial differences and stereotypes have continued today. Another example, this history is relevant because we still are not far removed from the influence of these perceptions and these thoughts and these processes. But there is a shining point in this. We can work to address them. And this is an article that was actually published from our institution by my predecessor, Dr. Quinn Capers, along with others from my institution. And so what they did is they wanted to look at implicit racial bias in medical school admissions in an effort to try and reduce those biases. And what they did is they wanted to measure implicit bias. So they had all 140 members of the College of Admissions Admissions Committee took the Black-White Implicit Association test. And if any of you have not heard of this, I would strongly encourage you to Google it, do a little research, and consider looking at the implicit association test. So they took this test prior to the 2012 to 2013 cycle, and the results were collected. And what did they find? They found that all groups, men, women, students, faculty, they all displayed significant levels of implicit white preference. And if you just pause for a second and think, what does that mean for individuals who are making decisions about who gets into medical school? This is certainly going to influence it. And so they thought, most survey respondents thought that the implicit association test might be helpful in reducing their bias. And so what were the results? Well, the class that matriculated after the IAT exercise was the most diverse class in OSU's admissions history at that time. And so checking these biases at the door when we're cognizant of them can help us to be more objective, more fair, and get away from the systemic issues that have been present within our healthcare and our medical school admissions. So how can we overcome these barriers? We know that they exist. Well, let's say it just takes time. We've heard about applying to medical school. Well, being invested in healthcare. And I'm going to say that we need you, especially those students that are in the audience. It does take time. You need to be thoughtful and you need to have planning, and knowledge of the process is key. Again, I mentioned and alluded earlier that I actually didn't have this knowledge shared with me at a time that could have been very instrumental. There are certainly do's and don'ts, and the practice of holistic review, and we've heard that before earlier this evening too. The practice of holistic review has been adopted by most medical schools. I can only speak for myself, so we wholeheartedly have embraced holistic review. So for us, it means that we look at your experiences, we look at your attributes, and we look at your metrics. And notice that this is 3 separate categories. And so when it comes to understanding how to apply to medical school, here are the experiences that our medical school, which is similar to most other medical schools, want to see the experiences that you have that are healthcare related. We want to see that you have a servant heart and that you're able to give of your time of your skills in an unpaid manner by volunteering and service. Now, we also realize that everyone doesn't have the opportunity to volunteer their time, and some people, quite frankly, have to work. Well, that's what we call double dipping. If you have to work and you know you want to go to, or you're interested in medical school, possibly considering a health care related area to get the hours of compensation, because you need it, as well as the experience to inform your decision that you want to go to medicine or medical school. We also want our students to have experience in research, which it does not have to be biomedical or scientific. We just want to see that you have the ability to critically think, see a problem through, read literature, because being a physician means not only a lifetime of service, but also lifelong learning. And physicians are leaders. And so we want to see leadership from our students, and it can be formal or informal. You can be the choir director at your church, or you can be the lead medical assistant at your job. We just want to see some degree of leadership. We also are looking for attributes of being a self-directed learner, being compassionate, being collegial, because medicine is a team sport. And I especially know that because no one comes to the hospital for the anesthesiologist. It truly is a team sport. You do have to write a personal statement, and your personal statement should be your personal statement. I would strongly discourage using any artificial intelligence to help write your personal statements. We also look at academic metrics, and I just want you guys to know, I know a lot of times students who are thinking about medical school immediately jump to academic expectations. Yes, they are important, but that is not the only thing. And so we do look at your GPA, and we also look at your MCAT. I also think it is important, and for the sake of time, I won't spend too much time here, but I think increasing access to preparation and practice resources is very, very important, especially when they're free, because medical school is already expensive enough. And so I would just encourage you to check out the AAMC.org MCAT prep. Oh, I should also say I do not have any financial disclosures. This is a free resource that you absolutely should be taking advantage of. There are questions are available, there are videos, there are study guides. Take advantage of the free resources. And again, more free resources here. And there are even testimonials from other students who are going through the process. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. In addition, in your journey for preparing for medical school for those students, it is important to understand that there are prerequisites. One prerequisite is you don't have to major in the science so long as you sprinkle in the prerequisites of biochem, biology, general chemistry, organic chem, physics within your undergraduate education. And in fact, you really should go after those majors that you're absolutely enthralled and excited to learn about, and ensure that you give your best one day at a time, one course at a time, and really just do well academically. There's also some recommended pre-work. Again, for the sake of time, I will not go into all of these, but we do encourage our students to take anatomy. But guess what? You can't learn it all in undergrad. We'll take care of that in medical school. Social sciences, humanities, because medicine is an art. And so having an appreciation for empathy, perspective taking, complex thinking, ethical courses, all those things will prove beneficial. Taking courses in diversity, which focus on the culture of other individuals or other circumstances, really helps to enlighten your perspective and the fact that things can be done differently. Of course, there are the exams. I won't spend too much time here either. You have the MCAT, which is the Medical College Admissions Test. This is certainly a test that you just don't take just to see how you're going to do. It is expensive. It is 8 hours. And much like a marathon, you need to plan accordingly for it. You need to pace yourself. It is not only a test of your knowledge, but it's also a test of stamina. So again, prepare well for that. There are also these other tests that you may be aware of. Or may have to take. Their situational judgment tests called the preview or Casper. Not all schools will require them, and that's just something I want to put on your radar as you think about preparing for medical school. Overall, the best thing you could do is to prepare well, to perform well. I am also including this MCAT scores for exams administered between 2018 and 2020. Of course, there are some updates to this, but it's not that much different. And I share this to say that there is a wide range of performance on the MCAT. And there is variability in the median MCAT for total scores from examinees from different backgrounds. And the similarities and differences in these data are in line with those reported for literature of other standardized admissions tests. And so research suggests that the differences in MCAT scores from examinees of different groups, whether they're underrepresented in medicine or based on race and ethnicity, reflect the societal inequities in income, education, and other factors. We heard about social determinants of health. Well, these are social determinants of life, and they really do impact how students perform on the test. And so it's not that the tests themselves are biased, and it's not that any one demographic of individuals are less capable of excelling in medical school. It's just that there are different barriers, societal barriers, educational barriers, income barriers, the ability to be able to purchase a tutor or hire a tutor for a test. Not everyone has that luxury. So again, the inequalities are a reflection of societal factors, not because there are individuals or groups of individuals that are incapable of doing this. And I also just wanted to share some national data on who applies to medical school. So when you are thinking about medical school, it is important to apply broadly. Now, this is data from the 2023-2024 applications cycle. And this is broken down by region. Of course, you have on the right side, the values of who is who. And you can see that there are far more applicants applying to medical school than there are spots in medical school. So apply broadly. That means consider applying to in-state schools, consider surrounding areas. Again, the AAMC or MSAR has an ability to give you information about what size of the class, what's the curriculum set up like. So you really have to do your homework and be thoughtful about where you apply to medical school. But the other takeaway I have for this is that you can see that as African Americans or Hispanic, Latino, Spanish origin, or individuals that are of Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, Native American, the number of applicants in comparison to other groups is very low. And so we need you to think about medical school, apply to medical school, and really envision yourself and be confident that this is something that you can do. Here is actually programmatic data from our institution that I'm very happy to share. We have over 200, a little over 200 spots. This year we're going up to 221 spots per class. But you can see COVID year was a big thing, and most medical schools saw an uptick in the number of students who were interested in medicine. And now we're kind of going back to our pre-COVID years. But you can see the number of total application that we receive by the orange or reddish bar, the percentage or the number of women who apply to our school, and then the number of students who identify as underrepresented. Yes, we are allowed to report this information in hindsight, not something that we look at during a current cycle. So what can medical schools do to diversify the physician workforce? I've already shared what you can do if you're an applicant. Apply early, apply broadly, be informed about what you need to do to make yourself a good candidate. But in terms of medical schools, educate and inspire, check. I'm here, we're having this discussion and planting those seeds. Improve transparency in the process. I've shared with you some of the things that you need to do. Not enough time to go in a lot of detail, but you know, there are definitely resources available to understand the process itself. As an institution or as a body of medical schools, expanding the size of medical student classes is something that has been given great thought. We are fortunate that we are able to do it, but it's 15 spots. And so because you still have to have residency training. You still have to have clinical sites where you're able to practice. And if there's not an expansion of that, then we can't have students not having a place to go complete their training. Also, reducing costs associated with medical school. It is very expensive. Pathway programs. Pathway programs are certainly advantageous, especially when students who come from underrepresented backgrounds may have socioeconomic disadvantage that they could benefit from pathway programs. That is one additional augment. And also planting seeds in the K through 12. Improving those educational experiences will certainly help to prepare for undergrad and for professional schools. And also providing mentorship and sponsorship. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We talked about that with wellness and really being able to say, hey, I'm not sure what's going on, or hey, can you help me, is not a sign of weakness, is actually a sign of strength. In addition, other things that medical schools can do, holistic review. We have some fantastic admissions deans across our 150 plus medical schools in this United States. And so here is one example of Dr. Mark Henderson at UC Davis, where he is, this was the title in the Seattle Times not long ago, with the end of affirmative action, a push for a new tool, adversity scores. And Dr. Henderson has been credited with the creation of a socioeconomic disadvantage score. And so he even starts this article off. He's the head of admissions, and he said mostly rich kids get to go to medical school. And he was pretty blunt in saying that, which is actually true if you look at the data. And so in his role, he's tried this tool and they've had very good success. So in addition to using holistic review, improving the process, using pathway programs, really collaborating is another thing that medical schools can do. Again, admissions folks that may be in the audience or faculty, getting involved in the process, being engaged, collaborating on best practices, using data to inform decision. And again, more resources at the AAMC to really understand, what does the MCAT actually measure? It measures knowledge at this particular point. There are some students who have a perfect MCAT and perfect GPA, think they want to go to medical school and then not do well because they're not well informed about their decision, because it takes more than just good grades or an MCAT to be a successful physician. You have to have empathy, compassion, leadership, and a willingness to give of yourself. In addition, other resources for individuals who are on the more faculty side, really using these tools, promising tools, admitting diverse classes, strategies, barriers, taking a closer look at the learning environment, insights to MCAT, like all of this data is available at our fingertips. And so in closing, there isn't one thing that can be done, but instead the solution is layered. And I actually include these pictures, again, very intentionally, with my family to the top right. And my daughters are actually, this is an old picture, I need to update it, but this is one of my favorite ones because they're just as tall as me right now. But each of these individuals on these slides have served as motivation and inspiration to me, including my husband and my daughters. And then this picture in the middle, with the beautiful bride centered there, is my mentee, one of my mentees. And the next lady next to her with the little white on her dress was another one of my mentees. And so all of these women are physicians, they've been medical students, they've been residents, and they really do inspire me to continue to create spaces where we can have physicians that go into areas that are underserved and go into specialties where healthcare disparities exist, such as increased maternal mortality of Black women, dying during pregnancy, or pediatrics. And then my predecessor, this young man here with the red tie, that's Dr. Quinn Capers, who's a cardiologist, who has been another just trailblazer in the DEI space. And all of these individuals here, Dr. Daphne here is one of my current residents who is just simply awesome. And so we need you, the upcoming generations, to take an interest in medicine. It takes time, understanding of the path, making the most of your opportunities, reducing barriers, and increasing representation is how we can collectively move the needle forward in the United States in education and research and healthcare and beyond. And so with that, thank you for allowing me to share my time with you today. This is me on the stage for our white coat ceremony, welcoming in the next batch of physicians. And I would love for some of you who are interested in medicine to really think about, what do you need to do to get there? And so with that,
I have a question, if possible.
Please.
This is Katie Cohen, the Assistant Dean of Admissions for Creighton and Phoenix. Dr. Rankin, I was just curious with the recent SCOTUS decision, how are you guys addressing that for your admissions process?
Great question. I would say multifaceted. We have blinded race and ethnicity for our screeners. In addition, we have streamlined the application as well, meaning our interviewers are already blinded to metrics and GPA. But when it came to the deliberation, because someone who interviews is someone who different than deliberates is someone who's different than screening. So many people have hands on an applicant. But at the deliberation phase, we actually have adopted a socioeconomic disadvantage score as well within our institution. And so therefore, we have removed other demographic data that we believe potentially could influence positively or negatively, for instance, an applicant's worthiness. For instance, removing parental information about if their parents are doctors or lawyers, or if their parents didn't attend high school, didn't attend college, really taking all of that demographic data out, still reporting if they're socioeconomically disadvantaged, EO1 or EO2, but also everyone gets a socioeconomic disadvantage score so that we're better able to characterize distance traveled, obstacles that were overcome, and really modeling after Dr. Henderson's work, but modifying it at our institution. And so in addition, we revisited all of our policies. We made sure that it was very clear that no one should ever ask about race, even though, we see each other on Zoom. And to be completely honest, we never awarded points for race or ethnicity. We definitely were cognizant of the fact that healthcare disparities exist and that, we need to improve representation, but we never awarded anyone points for race or ethnicity or never took away points. We were simply cognizant of the fact that we do want a diverse class and we want the best of the best.
Awesome.
Hopefully that
Thank you
helps.
so much. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question up front. Y'all can hear me, right? Yeah, great. Dr. Rankin, one of the programs that we're really invested in here at Creighton and Omaha is our mini medical school program, which is getting those elementary, middle school, high school kids interested in medicine. Do you have a program like that at Ohio State?
Yes, we do. And it is multi-pronged as well. We have both healthcare exposure, STEM. We also have research. We have K through 12, but we also have undergraduate programs that are aimed at, enriching their exposure and their experience to try and improve their experience with research, their experience with just healthcare in general. So yes, and we actually have a post-baccalaureate program called MedPath. Well, it's not K through 12, but it is a feeder program that students who come from socioeconomic or educational disadvantage, if they're able to demonstrate 1 year of academic success in this program, they have conditional acceptance into medical school. But yes, we do have K through 12, and it's not only just through the medical school, but we have the 7 health colleges. So we have nursing, we have pharmacy, public health, and they all have outreach for K through 12. In addition, our student interest groups really do a fantastic job. We have this program called MD Camp, which focuses primarily on high school students coming and spending 2 weeks out of the summer on the medical campus.
Thank you.
Dr. Elder Denard, would you please talk about or offer your thoughts about adversity statements. Well, at Ohio State, they have these, we were talking about these scores that you give. You give a numeric index for a person coming through some kind of unfortunate experience. There was a paper presented at the AAMC that talked about the importance of the SCOTUS decision, looking at ways in which applicants could craft adversity statements to help massage their application process and kind of communicate the experiences they've had that they believe negatively, consistent with the Supreme Court ruling, impacted their ability to kind of ascend into medicine. And so now statements are going to be modified, I think, to incorporate adversity factors that applicants believe adversely prevented them from making their ascent and what they did to overcome that.
More on the process of, I mentioned storytelling, and that we each have a powerful testimony of how we grew up, what we had for resources and sources, what we had for a support system. So we haven't been more actionably involved in the SCOTUS outcomes or the adversity statements as they're called. We try to integrate within the workplace, within recruitment and retention, what we call storytelling, where I guess from a more politically correct, knowing that we work on a broad base, even internationally with healthcare systems, to say storytelling. Give us the power of the experience of how you grew up, where you grew up, and using those gaps that would have otherwise been seen as deficiencies to see them as strengths, to see them that is the context of the real world. It is not the silver platter that's feeding the global society today. So we really see it as storytelling, that layman's term, if you will, that everybody can adapt to, and that we're all a brand. You know, we all have a story, we have a shell, we are empowered. And what is that? And we use that more of as a recruitment retention tool, an interviewing tool. And that seems to work very favorably.
Dr. Rankin, did you hear that? Dr. Johnson asked if you had any thoughts about that as well.
Oh, yes, thank you. No, I think that is a very beautiful way to capture it in terms of storytelling. I think students need to understand that are applying to medical school, they absolutely should feel empowered to describe who they are, what their motivations for medicine are. And it's no different. You can't tease away race, ethnicity, religion, the experiences that everyone has had, because that is who you are. Just as much as I am a female and my experiences in life as a woman may have motivated me to pursue medicine. So it's really a matter of who you are and not singling out that one particular aspect of who you are as the only reason. That's the motivating factor. So I believe the storytelling is absolutely very, very much important. And you have to understand, you have to be able to explain why. You know, a lot of times the why, when we're looking for in personal statements or other essays, is why do you want this? Why do you want this? And so that is a part of the storytelling. So, and I guess my other statement would be that I think we're still relatively early in this process, and I think there should be some caution exercised in overcorrection or overextension of what the ruling was. The ruling never said students couldn't talk about who they are or their motivations or things that are important to them. Medical schools or higher educational learning centers simply can't use race as the determining factor as to why someone should get in. But students absolutely should feel empowered to talk about who they are, why that is pertinent to their motivations of wanting to pursue medicine.